So good morning, everybody. Welcome to Erace this morning. I don't know if we're going to have a smaller group than normal. A couple people won't be here. So let me, sorry, I sent everybody the new guidelines and I forgot to grab mine, put it close to me. But Eracism is the slogan of the group Erace, which was formed in New Orleans in the summer of 1993. We seek ways through person-to-person communication to show that we treat all people with love and respect. Join us. The rules of the meeting, as everybody knows, are to put up one finger and move it like this, so that I can see you and put you on the list. And if the person speaking says something that you don't understand, not that you disagree with, but that you don't understand, you can put up two fingers and I will let you jump in and ask a clarifying question. We do not have clarifying statements. We have clarifying questions. And if your question is really to debate, you need to get on the list and make a statement. We do not treat each other with disrespect. We don't name call. We don't yell. We don't insult. We are an atmosphere of safety so that everybody can feel free to express their opinions. And feel free to and disagree, of course, if you want respectfully. About however much time is required before the end, we will do a final roundup based on how many people we ultimately have, and but we'll try to finish right at 11:30. And of course, everyone should stay muted unless they're called on to speak. So first I'm gonna have everybody introduce themselves, and then I'll say why I brought the this interview actually. So again, y'all know me, I'm Phyllis. Marva, you want to introduce yourself?
Good morning. My name is Marva. I've been coming to Erace post Katrina, and I look forward to getting up on Saturday morning. Always something to look forward to, and educational. Thank you.
Thanks, Marva. Louise?
Hey, I'm Louise. Been coming for over 2 decades in New Orleans, and then Katrina hit. We came to Austin, so I'm in Austin now. I love the meetings, and thanks for having me.
You're always welcome. Rebecca?
Good morning. I'm really glad to be here. I couldn't the past few times because of demands of my garden, but thank heavens, I think it's been put to bed for the winter. And this is an amazing meeting. The article is really deep and amazing. Thanks so much. I'm so glad to be here. I'm from Boston. Bye-bye.
Nancy?
Good morning, I'm Nancy. I've been coming to Erace since June of 2007.
Thank you. Michelle?
Good morning, I'm Michelle, and I've been coming to Erace since summer of 2020. When Louise introduced it to me. I'm here in Austin, Texas, and I've been enjoying coming myself since that time. So nice to meet everybody, see everybody, I should say.
Thanks. Nora?
Hi, everybody. I'm Nora, and I'm in Austin also. And I really enjoy the meetings, and I feel like I'm in school when I come, and it's been a lot of, I don't know if I can say fun, but I've enjoyed the research that the articles have prompted me to do, to kind of catch up to speed a little bit with the topic each time. So thank you.
Thank you. Richard?
Hi, everybody. It's Harvey in New Orleans. I've been with Erace since the beginning in 1993.
Thank you. Are we calling you your actual name?
My actual name is Richard. That's my middle name.
Okay. Leonetta.
Good morning, everybody. I've been a member of Erace since I was an intern.
Thank you. Glenn.
I'm Glenn Abdullah. I've been with Erace since 1994. Happy to be here this morning.
Thank you. So I chose this article after I came across a video by Robin D.G. Kelly that was linked under something else I was watching for an anti-racist book group that I'm in. And the topic that we had this past week was discussing racial capitalism. And I decided I wanted to use that topic for this Erace discussion too. I actually put the video link in the chat before the meeting started. If you want to click on it and get it uploaded on your computer to watch later. It's about an hour and it's like a academic lecture. And I thought that this interview gives some insights into his work and his ideas. And in the book group that I'm a part of, this was a topic that like brought up all the ways capitalism keeps all but a small group of people controlled and divided, and makes us, it really made us aware in the group of the many tangled threads of oppression that we need to work to unravel. So having said that, I have more to say at the end. I hardly ever make notes, but I made a lot of notes for this one for my final topic. So the list is open. Okay, Richard. Anybody else? Rebecca? Okay, Richard, you can talk. I'll keep looking.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I think some of you know me as just in terms of where I'm coming from, on particularly on economic issues, which this article seems to focus on largely. I'm a Bernie Sanders supporter. So when it comes to talking about capitalism and Marxism in those broad terms, that's where I'm coming from in terms of politically and economically who I look to in terms of my worldview. And I think one way that I'd like to hope to see this discussion go, rather than get caught up in the terms Marxism and capitalism and socialism and all that it means, I hope we can bring it down to our day-to-day lives, particularly in places like New Orleans. So, I mean, when I think about Marxism, and he talks about the different shades of it by talking about, I guess, socialism light or Marxism light, which is kind of a superficial way to talk about it. But, you know, we can talk about socialism simply in terms of like the food co-op in New Orleans, where the co-op is owned by its members, and by folks taking control of their food and of their nutrition by coming together and basically owning the grocery store together. So I don't, to the extent that we can get down to kind of the granular level and talk about how this affects our everyday lives, I think it'll make a difference. I like to distinguish between mom and pop capitalism and corporate capitalism. It's just, to talk about capitalism in broad brush terms is futile, because there's so many shades of it. And it's the same thing with socialism and Marxism. Of course, there's the European forms of socialism, which Bernie Sanders largely likes to think of himself within that realm. And there's a lot to recommend that. There's obviously the hardcore Marxism, which to the average person in the 7th Ward or 8th Ward or anywhere in New Orleans wouldn't have a clue what that really means, except a form of a political propaganda to say somebody's a socialist or a Marxist is a way to target them and dismiss them. So the more we can get granular and kind of talk about these terms in our day-to-day lives, I think the better we'll be in this discussion. Thanks.
Thank you. Rebecca. And the list is open.
It's really hard to talk about this to me because it's so horrible. But it seems to me I've traveled in Spain, and the interesting thing about Spain is they have beautiful old buildings that contain images of Judaism and Islam and Christianity. But it was the Christians who stomped on the others most effectively. The others were stompers too, but the Christians were particularly violent stompers. And it seems to me that Christianity and capitalism go together in a really unattractive way. And I honestly, I wouldn't have thought of it except for this article. And because I was talking to a friend about how the religions originally there was some aspect of it where they all got along. But it's really sad to think that Christianity and capitalism allowed for all of the expansion of empires and killing of people and enslaving people. So I don't know, that's the gloomy side of this. Maybe somebody will see a cheerful side. Okay, that's all.
Thank you. The list is open. You don't have to be an expert to talk. Marva.
I'm Catholic. I don't go along with all the beliefs of the teachings. My family is predominantly Catholic. And I always thought as a child growing up, the Catholic religion should have served the poorest communities. They shouldn't have private schools. The hype was if you went to Xavier Prep, you would better than the public school children. I have a belief that if there was a better education, could it be accessible through the church free? And the Catholic religion has always displayed wealth, riches to me in capitalism. I don't understand need for degree for and the need for wealth in the church. Wouldn't they survive on good deeds, donations? It's a business. Thank you.
Thank you. The list is open. Nancy and then Louise.
I think to answer Margaret's question about who can attend Catholic school and who can't. Yes, it's a religious thing, but it's also based on a class and privilege thing. Because if you can afford, at least when I was going to school, there were Catholic schools. Primarily white children went to Catholic schools. There were some Black children who, and I mean, not some, but very few, who went to Catholic schools because their parents could afford to send them to Catholic schools. And so it was seen as a class thing, and a wealth and a privilege thing. And so I think that's why, when you say, can it be free? I guess, I don't know. I never went to a Catholic school, if they had scholarships or some programs for people who were less fortunate to be able to attend. I'm not sure. But that's why I think that even now, it's still a class and a privilege thing. Even amongst Black schools, to be able to go to Xavier Pep and what's the other one out in the East? It's a class. St. Mary's. It's a class and a privilege, even amongst African American students, to go, because your parents can afford it. If your parents can't afford it, then you don't go.
Thank you, Nancy. Louise.
I apologize because I could not open up the article at all. So I'm just going to comment on what I've heard so far. And I agree with Richard that socialism has become, is bandied around as if it's a bad word, and people have no idea what it is really. And so I think that's wrong. I think socialism is a wonderful way to go. And I also am a Sanders advocate. As for Catholic schools, I personally don't think religious schools should be at all. Only because, that should be a separate thing. It shouldn't be like their regular education. Because, let's face it, they have a little tainted view on, evolution and such like. So I don't think that should be taught unless you go to a Sunday school or something separate away from the regular education. There was one other thing, and now I don't know what it was. Maybe later.
You
Right.
can get back on the list if you think of it. Thank you. And the list is open again. Rebecca and then Marva.
I guess I'd like to hear a little more about the Rainbow Coalition and how that fits into this. And maybe one of you know, and I don't. I'd like to hear that if that's possible. Thank you.
Nancy, I'll put you on the list. Marva, you're next.
I think the rich and powerful during Bernie Sanders' run for the president invested money because he against him, because he was promoting fair share of the wealth of America, and those his views upset the rich and powerful, and the rich and powerful are mostly the white race, and he scared people when role reversal was into play. He was a good candidate, and I'm sorry he didn't. If he was to be hired in his position that he held when he ran, yes, he was a been a formidable candidate. Thank you.
Thank you. Nancy, and the list is open after Nancy.
I don't have a statement as to a question. I read the article. I'm not familiar with a lot of the references in the article, particularly the Robin D.G. Kelly. I don't know who he is. Maybe if you could elaborate a little bit more on who the man was. I just had it was kind of Greek to me in a lot of ways. I'm sorry.
Okay, well, I'm going to break the facilitator, keep your mouth shut rule. So I just learned of him in the last week. He's a professor at UCLA. He's a historian. The intro lists some of the books he's written and the one he is writing. The lecture that I attached, I didn't initially attach it to the email because it is an hour long and I thought it might be a lot. And, I'm not an expert on economic theory at all. But I'm not opposed to learning more about Marxism. And I definitely leaned heavily for Bernie when he was on the ballot. I'm not afraid of the word socialism. I think there are really good reasons to attempt that in big and small ways to have a more equitable society. I would say, like, Nancy, can you say what was Greek to you? Because like I said, I'm not an expert, and he mentions people that I have not had time to research. You're muted.
Racial capitalism. They talked a lot about racial capitalism.
Okay, so racial capitalism is what my book group was specifically discussing. So this is with some of the notes I took. So capitalism is hierarchical in structure. It requires many to lose for some to win. It works against those who have the least power in society, and it relies on extracting resources extra legally, which also involves cruelly repressive policing. And an example is, the colonies, whether it was the United States or the Caribbean, became as successful as they were based on the enslavement of Africans. And that itself was basically commodifying Black bodies, Black labor to ensure profit. Another way it happened was that in the beginning of the United States, there were mainly white indentured servants and Black enslaved people, and they got together and rebelled at times. And that's when the white establishment ruling class realized they've got to give crumbs to white working people to keep Black and brown people down. So that's part of it. I hope that helps.
Okay, with that being said, wouldn't the justice system and the prison system and all of that play into racial capitalism?
Yep.
Because there are industries that profit and use the labor of the prison system and therefore make financial gain off the enslavement of certain groups of people through the justice system. They don't have the Black codes or the Black that they had in the late 1800s, laws that were specifically targeted towards newly freed slaves to re-enslave them through the prison system and therefore use their labor for free. That was very blatant, but now it's more subtle through the justice and the prison system to capture certain groups of people and exploit their labor once again. So is that kind of what this is about?
Yep, you nailed it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next I have Louise and then Michelle and then Glenn.
I was only going to say what you said, Phyllis. Yes, Nancy, that is exactly what capitalist racism is, and we have all kinds of names. The environmental racism. I mean, it's on. And I think if we embraced socialism a little more and evened out the, have a cap on earning. I mean, I guess people might call some of my views a little extreme, but I truly believe that no one should earn as much as some people do. It's a ridiculous amount that they'll never spend in their whole entire lives, and we need to distribute the wealth a little bit. Thus, uplifting the poor, uplifting people who struggle, and brown and black people are a part of that, and that would help. It would just help. So, but we've got a long way to go. I don't think we're ever going to be a socialist country, but we live in hope.
Thank you, Louise. Next, Michelle.
Yeah, I was kind of like Nancy. I kind of had a little bit of Greek to me understanding of this article, but it leads me to lots of different jumping around thoughts because one, I know that a principle of like somebody asked about the Rainbow Coalition, and I remember what I've learned so much about the Rainbow Coalition. I've learned from a couple of movies that I watched about the Black Panthers and their use of, I guess today, kind of one of the terms that's bandied around a lot, and of nonprofit groups definitely around here in Austin, and I know they're all over the United States, mutual aid groups, where we contribute as a group to the betterment of pockets of society that are struggling, and we come together to do that. And I think the Black Panthers one of the tenets of the Black Panthers was providing aid to anybody, no matter race, religion, whatever. They were truly about bringing everybody together and providing for those, and that was a big tenet of their organization, and that was blackballed by whites in the 60s during the civil rights movement, and as socialism, obviously, but it was really not understood by the white people in the 60s and what they were doing, and so it was never brought to the fore the good that it was actually doing for society, and something that I just recently learned through these books and movies that I've been watching. So it was an eye-opening thing for me, and then just knowing that, just like Louise says, things are going to have to drastically change in order for the United States to get better as a society, as a whole, to solve all these huge complex issues we now have facing us that are just going to be taking a whole radical new view of how we as a society function. And we just need to, it's hard to wrap our heads around that. I think that's one of the things that's stymieing us here, but it's because so many people that are in power don't want to lose their privilege and don't want to lose their comfort, so to speak, and they don't understand how that's going to happen, and they don't understand how to make that happen. I think they're scared is really what it boils down to.
Thank you. I hope you get back on the list and say more. Glenn, anybody else I missed? Go ahead, Glenn.
Yes, first of all, I do not believe
Sure.
in communism or socialism solves humanity's problem, is an answer to humanity's problem. Russia is the biggest communist country, and the people are suffering under that system. I believe in charity. I believe that a person should, spend some of what they've been blessed with to help others. And we do have a lot of that in America. You have somebody who was filthy rich, who's going in Africa and using that money to find a cure for malaria and other things that plague the African nation. And I believe a person should make as much money as they can make, but don't empower yourself, use the political system to suppress others from making money. That's my point of view.
Thank you, Glenn. Greer, you're next. And the list is open after Greer. Nancy.
I'm thinking, as far as socialism, Marxism, any type of communism, it won't work here because as long as we potentially benefit from it, it doesn't work, or it won't pass. Or if you look at the like civil rights era, when things were being passed, like affirmative action, civil rights bill, you had to get other people in there in order for that bill to pass. It couldn't solely benefit. Nothing solely benefits us. Somebody else has to always be a part of it. But you have things that solely benefit other people. And like Nancy was saying, it exploits labor. And there's an agenda from cradle to grave to benefit off of Black people. Once they freed us, they had to find another way to enslave us. Article 1 of the amendment that freed us said freedom can be taken away from you as punitive damages for criminal activity. When you have an agenda to criminalize a segment of the population, and we see everything that's going on now and that's been going on in the past, by putting us in jail, not only can you get the labor from us, but you also get funding for rural areas. You get gerrymandering, populations increase. It's servitude. As long as hearts and minds continue to be racist, never work. That's it.
Thank you, Greer. Nancy. The list is open. Nora.
Yeah, you are supposed to do your best, and you are supposed to strategize on how to do your best and how to capitalize on whatever opportunities that are available to you or the opportunities that you make for yourself. However, the problem comes in is in people, your moral compass. Okay, where is your moral compass? And the moral compass has been stretched to the limit at this point, as far as the lack of civility in this country, the lack of gratuity towards one another in this country. And where that exactly started taking place, I'm not sure. You know, where the starting point is. But all right, take for example a company, and I use Walmart as an example, whom the Affordable Care Act was targeting, because Walmart was making all this money, not paying any taxes, exploiting the labor of lower socioeconomic people and not giving them any benefits. Okay, there was one.
Let's see you, Richard.
And not giving them any benefits. And particularly, they would have a health care plan, but the health care plan cost so much they couldn't afford it. And therefore, they would have to rely on Medicaid and LaChip and other state-funded or government-funded health insurance programs or healthcare programs. That is the kind of thing that when you look at these mega billion companies, how much money they're making, are they giving it back to their employees? That's why they have a labor shortage now. I mean, I'm actually kind of pissed off because here I am at the point of retiring and employees are just starting to take back their power. okay, or exert their power, exert the power that they have. Union participation, people are clamoring for unions because they're tired of being exploited. Okay, so it is one thing to, but America would not exist. And quite frankly, through their greed, American capitalist greed, they have brought about their own downfall by investing in China, okay, who is now one of the greatest probably capital powers in the world, and who is now arming themselves with nuclear weapons and making mock models of United States military ships for target practice. I'll get back. I know I've talked more in 2 minutes,
Oh,
but
I
I
forgot
listened to a
set
very
the
good interview from a man who wrote a book, 2034, about World War III between the United States and China, and it's not looking good for the United States. Okay, I'll get back.
Thank you. Sorry, I forgot to set the timer. Nora?
Yeah, I, as usual, have more questions than statements, but, and there were a couple of quotes and and I'm not sure if they're attributed to the author of the article or to Cedric Robinson, but, and so I just want to throw them out and see what kind of response there might be. And one was the quote, "America has been fascist all along." And then the other one was internationalism is the raid, as in the poison, the raid for the cockroach of fascism. So I'd love to hear if anybody has a thought on that. And then somehow this popped into my head. I was pretty much raised non-theist, and however, I frequently would hear this, and I don't know where it comes from because I'm non-theist, but the phrase, "There will always be the poor." And I don't know, was that something Jesus said? I don't know, but whenever I would hear that, it felt like an excuse. Oh, okay, then we don't really have to do anything about it, because the poor are always going to be there. So oh well. Anyway, that's all.
Thank you. And if nobody else does, or even if they do, I'll address that at the end. And next we have Richard, then Nancy. Glenn, you want to get on the list? Okay.
Yes, I'd like to respond largely to what Nancy said. First of all, you know, in the context of race relations, the Chinese, for all the issues we have about them, are, quote, people of color. So let's put it in that context. The other issues that Nancy brought up, I think are valid because it brings up what I said at the outset, is that I think we need to distinguish between, again, what I call mom and pop capitalism, the capitalism we see along any of the, largely the smaller commercial streets in New Orleans, where folks have shops and are just, you know, they're independently owned shops, whether food stores or the typical kinds of services that meet neighborhood needs. And these are independently owned, and folks are trying to make a living just to make a better life for their kids, versus, as Nancy said, the Amazons and the Walmarts, which won't even allow union organizing, won't even allow union organizers on their property. That's corporate capitalism. And I think there's a huge difference. Now, the problem is that there's a huge gray area in between where a lot of the problems lie. But I think instead of throwing out capitalism on its own, I think we have to target what I would call corporate capitalism, which is the kind that Nancy was talking about, which does impacts so many people's lives. And it gets at what I think the author was talking about, is that so much inequality, inequity, racial and otherwise, is economically based, largely to blame by the corporate capitalists. And it is not racially based per se. It's more mediated by the actions of the corporate capitalists. And I think that's largely what the article was getting at. And it largely gets at the Rainbow Coalition that Jesse Jackson was trying to put together, which looked at the kinds of economic issues that affect everybody.
Richard, do you want to get back on the list? No, I guess not. Nancy, and then Glenn, and the list is open.
Well, I was just going to talk about, I can't remember the man's name. I'll have to look it up. He is he's a veteran. And this interview was done on Veterans Day. It was on NPR. I think I'm one of them, 1A or Fresh Air. Or one of and he talked about, well, primarily he was talking about the military, but he wrote a book, which I don't remember the name of that, but I remember this new book that he has come out. It's called 2034. And there was a segment on CBS, I think it was CBS Sunday Morning or either 60 Minutes, one of the two. As you can see, my memory's not as good as it used to be. But it talked about China making using model Navy ships for target practice as it relates to them building their army and their nuclear warhead supplies. And this was the first time I'd heard of China doing something like this. But considering that in this last year and a half, how China, oh, you need hand sanitizers, you need masks, you need gloves, plastic latex gloves. Oh, I'm sorry, we need it too. So we're not giving it to you. So everything that has gone on since their attitude, and they hold all our money. We owe them all this money. I mean, they've really got us by the short ones in a lot of respects. And the United States allowed this to happen because they thought that they could go over there and set up shop in China, where they had lower wages, didn't have to pay benefits, could reap more profits. But the Chinese took their technology and their industries, and now they are using that against us. And I don't know how many, why the United States doesn't seem to see that and recognize that, we are in a vulnerable position because of this. So I'm sure I've hit my 2 minutes. I'll stop now.
Yeah, do you want to get back on?
No, not right now.
Okay, I have Glenn. And then the list is open.
Yeah, well, when they said about the poor will always be among us, I think that's true, in the sense that there always will be people who will be poor in spirit, poor in intelligence, and poor in other human aspects. And that's why that's why religion teaches us for the human being to be charitable, so you can help others that are lacking in the resources that you have in those areas, and in economics. Now, I don't think that I think America has always had high ideals. And the kind of America we looking at that's in the news, I don't think that's where America originally started from or want to be. And but we have so much freedom. We have freedom allowed that anybody can do whatever they want to do. They have the freedom to do it. You want to be an anarchist, you can be an anarchist. You know, whatever you want, America allows the freedom. That's it.
Thank you. Greer is next, then Nancy.
Well, China is making a big play, if you think about it. If they're doing all of this, and when they made their move to basically with tantamounts to payday loan Africa, supposedly giving loans for infrastructure for like trains, hospital housing, sewage, and other things, but in exchange they get mineral rights to mineral rich land. So at the end of the day, when you can't pay back a loan, then they technically will own that land. I mean, we're talking billions upon billions of dollars. There are whole cities built in Africa. I'm talking about modern day skyscrapers, everything. They're basic ghost towns in some of the places because no one's living there. And then when they build anything, they build it with the cultural style of China. Now, if you're building something in another country, wouldn't it reflect the culture of that country? But it does not, which I find incredible. And they all laid this out by actually donating. This was like a Trojan horse gift, I'll call it. They built over, I think like 200 football stadiums in different African countries just to be able to get their foot in the door. And I fought America on our terms of things because we're one of few countries that will let a foreign entity own property in its country. If I'm not Japanese, I could be living in Japan for 30 years. If I'm not a citizen of Japan, I can't own the house. I can't own a plot of land. I can't own anything. America has sold out parts of this country to so many other people. My question is it still America? That's it.
Perfect timing, Greer. Nancy, you're next, and the list is open after that.
Okay.
Richard.
Back to the United States, the origins of the United States and the Declaration of Independence and all that stuff. United States started out as an idealistic country about, everybody, equal rights for everyone and blah, 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 so forth and so on. But that did not include women or anybody, as I always say, white, Christian, heterosexual, wealthy men. That's what this idealistic platform that they proposed, that's who they were talking about. And if you didn't fall in those parameters, we are not talking to you. And that's when it started to fall apart, when other people, women, people of color, started to demanding equal rights. We want to be included in that all men are created equal. That no, wait a minute, because that means you're going to take something away from me and I'm not going to be superior anymore.
Glenn.
That is when this all started. This is when it started to, fall apart. The idea, and right now, other countries, Russia, is capitalizing on that in the sense that they know that we have this divide. We have this gender divide, we have a racial divide, we have a sexual orientation divide. There are so many divisions in this country, and all we have to do, meaning Russia, has to do is get us fighting amongst ourselves, which we are, to the extent that we are not paying attention to other countries who are looking to join forces and take us down. And I think that the United States Congress, with their fighting amongst each other, threatening to strip people because they voted for the infrastructure bill. I mean, I know I'm getting off topic from the subject, but it's true that we're fighting amongst each other, and other countries are looking to just wait for the right moment.
Can you get
Okay,
back on the list?
I could, I guess.
Yeah, I think you can. Richard, Glenn, and then Nancy. Richard, you're still muted.
There
There
we
you go.
go. Okay. Well, I was going to respond to Greer's perspective on China and Africa, and then, as usual, something else came along that I had to respond to. I'm chafing a little bit at Nancy's perception that it's the rest of the world is ganging up on the U.S. Particularly, I guess she's looking at China and some of the other countries, and that we better damn well straight do something about it. I think as a planetarian, I think that flies in the face of what needs to be done to save this planet. We can't, I think, as much as we want to be consider ourselves Americans, that it's more about what's in the planet's best interest at this point, rather than what's in the United States' best interest. I don't think the two are by any means are congruent. I happen to agree a lot with what Greer said about what is happening with China and Africa. And to me, that gets back at basically what's at the heart of this article. And that is that it's economic malevolence, not racial malevolence, that's at the heart of a lot of the exploitation. The Chinese are not, quote, I use this word because you know how I feel about the concept of whiteness to begin with. The Chinese are not, quote, white. They are Chinese, and their capacity to exploit, in this case, Africans, is as strong and as impactful as anything that quote the quote white Europeans have done throughout their history. So there's nothing inherent in quote whiteness unquote that is more exploitive than any other people, and it gets back to that. It's the economic systems that are at play here, and who controls the economic systems. And it's not a matter of race; it's a matter of who's in control, regardless of what their racial background is. And I think that the example Greer points out is a very good one.
Thank you, Richard. Next is Glenn, and then Nancy.
Yeah, I know what
Leonetta.
when the Constitution was written, it did not exercise everything in the Constitution, and it always did mean for all people, you know, freedom, justice, and equality for all people. It always did mean that, but it wasn't exercised. Even the founding fathers know that slavery was wrong, but they also have in the Constitution to form to strive for forming a more perfect union. That's something we've been striving for a more perfect union. For those people that say that, well, it didn't mean us. Well, we're full of Congress. Have a lot of African Americans. We have a lot of cities that are run by Black women and African American males. So we have joined into that perfect union. And also, we don't need to fear that somebody buying something up in America, because America has been buying up other places all over the world. And America also, there's nothing against a law that foreigners can't buy in Japan. They do buy in Japan. There's no law against it. The law allows them to buy it. So we're not. The other world. The other countries are now being able to buy in America, but we have always been buying in other countries, buying up property in businesses in other lands. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Glenn. Nancy, and then Leonetta.
Interesting. Well, for one, in response to Harvey, Asian was AAPI are people of color. Anybody who is not European is a person of color. So I'm not saying that Chinese or Asian people are not people of color. I'm not saying that. What I'm talking about is getting at part of this article about economic power and how it and capitalism, but how there's an intersection between race and economic power and who it affects. And there's also the how it can cross over into different areas. I mean, Walmart's and Amazon's effects of their business practices don't just affect Black people, okay? Don't just affect Asian people. It does, or does not, or say it does not affect white people. It affects everybody. But there are some people more impacted than others. And that's kind of like all I was saying, but also on the, to expand that as far as the United States as a nation, I'm talking from a worldview of how the world views the United States and how certain countries such as Russia and China view the United States. And they always, you know, when you're on top, somebody wants to topple you, wants to take you off your pedestal. And these countries have been knocking at the door to take the United States off its pedestal for years, particularly Russia. So if we can't beat you through military might, we can usurp you, you know, and eat away at your weakest links, and cause you to implode. That's what I'm saying.
Thank you, Nancy. Next is Leonetta. And then Glenn.
First of all, I want to apologize for going in and out. First, I got a call from FEMA, and now I just had a drive-by outside the door. So I wanted to comment. So it's been a hectic morning over here. So the police just left from the drive-by.
Oh my gosh.
I want to talk about you talked about Catholic and capitalism. I'm a product of Catholic schools 12 through 1 through 12. In elementary school, I went to an all Black Catholic school, and it was diverse as far as economics. I think the poor kids had they had a sliding scale, and at that time, anybody that was Catholic, they wanted their children to have a Catholic education, and did what they could to get them. But when I went to high school, I did not go to St. Mary's Xavier, which was a predominantly Black Catholic high schools. I went to Chappelle. My class was 320 girls, and we had 2 Black girls, and I was one of the 2. It was very elitist, very class, or whatever you want to call it. It was like that in high school. So I just and about the Catholic Church. How am I doing with time, Phyllis?
39 seconds.
Okay. I feel like I have, since I'm a Black Catholic is different from regular Catholics. We have a different view of the church. We've endured racism since day one. I don't need to go. I don't have enough time to go into the racism in the Catholic Church, but it is the Catholic Church is linked with capitalism. The Catholic Church owns a lot, has a lot of money, owns a lot of property all over the world, and it didn't get it in a good way. I'm finished. My time's up. Yeah, okay.
Right up. Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right.
Next is Glenn. List is open after Glenn.
There's a misunderstanding that China is self-sufficient and everybody is dependent on China, and China is not dependent on no one else. the world trades. A lot of people are dependent on products that are only produced, that are produced in America, or the price is right for them to buy it from America. China trades with America, receives products from America because it does not supply all of its needs for his people. All these ships that are constantly on the sea, bringing goods back and forth to different countries, and we will never get back to
True.
where we'll never get back to where we won't need trade from other countries. Our food comes from some of our food comes from other countries. That's it.
Thank you, Glenn. Greer, you're next. The list is open after Greer.
China, if you look at it, China's basically using the blueprint that every other country that has colonized Africa has used, even down to the racism, even down to brutality. Because when a lot of Chinese come over and they start doing their own little mine, it's not just big mining companies, it's little companies that came over too. The workers are treated badly. Some of them are being whipped and beaten. I've seen like a whole bunch of videos on those. They also are not getting the proper equipment used when they're mining. It's because in order to the ore from the earth, it has to be superheated. A lot of them have been burnt and maimed, and the minute they complain about it, basically they get fired. So China's doing everything everybody else did when they came. They're doing what they have to get what they can at the expense of the people who are already there. That's it.
Thank you. Michelle is next, and she'll be the last one on the list, and then we'll go into the wrap up.
Well, I'm going off of Louise in the chat. She said we need Pedro here for this discussion because he's always bringing up the racial wealth gap here. And since he's not here, it always triggers me because I know he likes to he knows William Darity at the University of North Carolina and his studies and a lot. And I always go back to one of the things that I think white society here in America is never going to fully grasp until they see it for themselves is that wealth gap and how it was created and how much Jim Crow and everything exacerbated that to a large extent, and the monopoly example for people. And I just listened to an interview with Leonard Moore, who's a professor here at the University of Texas, and he just came out with a new book, teaching Black history to white people. And I listened to his interview that he did with Chris Boyd on Think at KARA in Dallas. And he gave the same kind of example of the monopoly when explaining to his students about the disparities that exist in the Black community because of all that repression. And it's just very prescient because it's just, again, until we get white society to understand that on a very basic level, people just aren't going to continue to assume that it's, your own fault, your laziness, your unproductivity, whatever it is that they're going to blame, instead of blaming the systemic racism that existed in the society that held all these people back. And, the example being, here I'm at a table with a bunch of white people and I'm the Black person at the table playing Monopoly. I'm given a piece, I'm told I can play, but I can't start playing. They give me $750 and everybody else gets $1,000. And they tell me I can't start playing the game until the 20th roll of the game. And he says, well, that's not fair. And he said, well, that's the rules. That's the rules. We got to play by the rules. And so here I am. I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to stay at the table. And here comes, and everybody gets their turn and they start playing. And then finally my turn comes and it's the 20th roll. I roll. I go to play the game like you would play to take my money and I'm going to go buy myself some properties. And what do I find? All the properties have already been bought. And so I can't invest. I can't put my money into the system, and I can't make money. And if I don't have money to you know, properties or some sort of capital to make more money. So how is that fair? And then, you know, they say, well, that's your fault. You're just not, you know, and so it's prescient in that regard because, again, he says, he went on to say, well, then what happens if you know, we decide we're going to go to dinner and we're going to leave the game and we're going to let our kids continue to play the game. So they come and they sit down in our place and we get all the money, they get all the money and the properties and everything that we've accumulated in the game, and they start playing at that level. And then you go around the board and people ask my daughter who took my place with I have nothing basically, and ask her like, well, then why don't you have any money? Why don't you have any capital? What's going on? What, you know, why didn't you play the game the same way? And she says, because you discriminated against my father in the beginning of the game. So how can I ever be at the same level as you? So you know,
Thanks.
that's the way he explains it to his students in his classes that he teaches about this kind of stuff.
That's
So
great.
yeah,
That was really good. Thank you.
It is.
Um,
That was good. I like
I want to
that.
audit his class. I was like, oh my God, he's here at the University. I'd love to audit his class and sit in on it.
and it's Leonard Moore. That's who you said that.
Yeah, his name is Leonard Moore, and it's teaching Black history to white people.
Okay.
But I recommend the interview he did with Chris Boyd. It's just like about 30 minutes long.
Okay.
And it was really good. Just
Thank
overview
you.
of the book and who he is.
So now we'll go into the roundup. Everyone who's here today actually spoke at some point during the meeting. Congratulations. And Greer has asked to go first because she has to leave. So go ahead, Greer. 1 minute. You're muted again. Okay.
It won't even be a minute. Great article. I really enjoyed it after I got into it and everybody started chiming in. I think as for people of color, racism and capitalism are intertwined. I don't think you can separate the two. It's like they're like Mike and Ike, yin and yang. They're always together when it comes to people of color. Nice seeing everybody. I gotta go. Y'all have a good weekend.
Bye, Greer.
Bye.
Okay, next we'll do Marva.
I enjoyed all of the information and input in this. Leave this discussion with many thoughts to think about. And thank you.
Thank you. Rebecca?
Yeah, it's a very, very good discussion. I hope we can have more of it because it's hard to kind of catch on to all of it and it takes a little more time. But thanks for everybody that spoke. It's really very good and very interesting.
Thank you. Nancy?
Yeah, once I understood what it was about, it was a very, very good article and a lot of good thoughts. And I love Michelle's explanation using the Monopoly game to explain the wealth gap in this country, which is significant. Very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Michelle?
I can't take credit for it because, like I said, I've listened to it a couple of times from a couple of different Black experts on the matter. So you know, it really helped me understand for sure. So good article. Once, yeah, like Nancy, once I kind of got a little bit better in the concept, but it was very deep when I read it, and I thought I'm not sure I'm going to be able to contribute too much to this conversation because I needed some explainers. So thank you, Phyllis, for filling us in a little bit better. But yeah, hope everybody has a good week and look forward to seeing you next week. I'll definitely be there because I'm facilitating.
Yes, you are. Your debut trip. Richard?
Yeah, I guess what again drew me to this article was that it did talk about two fundamentally different economic systems, and that have to emphasize that for discussions like this to really have any value, we have to get granular and again, talk about gradations of capitalism. Mom and pop capitalism on its own is not evil. Corporate capitalism needs to be brought to account because it's at the heart of a lot of the racial inequality and inequity that we're talking about. Socialism per se is not evil. There's gradations of it that are currently at Social Security. I mean, once we start getting specific, we can, we can talk about all kinds of socialism that's already at play in the U.S. and most people go along with. So there's a lot to break down here in this kind of discussion as far as specifics.
Thank you, Richard. Next, Nora.
No additional comments, but thanks everybody. Lots to think about. Thank you.
Thank you. Leonetta.
Wonderful article, wonderful discussion. And it made me think about my little education, my little Catholic education. I had never thought about it as being that. But thank you for the article, Phyllis. It brought back some memories. Made me think about my classmates and things like that.
We're glad you're safe. Sorry you had violence in your neighborhood this morning.
And it's unusual. This is very unusual.
Yeah, scary.
In the morning, a bright sunny Saturday morning.
Yep. Never know. Glenn.
Very interesting subject, and they are solutions, but you got to start thinking outside your box and stop thinking that the government is going to be the solution. It can be part of the solution, but it's going to really taking people pulling themselves up by their own resources, especially their human resource. Thank you.
Thank you. And Louise.
Yeah, such a simple and great analogy, the monopoly analogy, and it would be just great to use that if people are confused as to why brown and black people are the underclass. So that's a great analogy. An old anarchist saying was, "Eat the rich." That's it.
Some people are still saying that.
Yeah.
So I thank you, Louise. I'm going to go and address some questions that came up that I don't think fully got addressed. So Nora, the two quotes you asked about, I believe those were Kelly stating his own opinions, but I would have to go back and read them again to see. Because he's talking, it's not a written article by him, so he's just naturally talking. And I think he clarified himself at points where I was confused, and then he clarified himself later. So I think that was his opinion. Let's see. The quote from Jesus, attributed to Jesus. I actually Googled it and took a picture of some versions of it because there's multiple versions. So basically, English Standard is, "For you always have the poor with you, and whenever you want, you can do good for them, but you will not always have me." And that last sentence is, I've never heard it quoted when people quote that. So but I don't think it's a statement about the poor that we should take as well. There's only this little bit, we can do good for them, but we don't really have to solve it. I think it's almost an admonition that you will never care enough to really move the poor up to not being poor. That's how I have always taken it. That's my personal take. And then I think Rebecca mentioned the Rainbow Coalition, which this article took me back to the 80s. I heard, I don't know which order these things happened, but when Jesse Jackson was running, I heard him speak at the place where I had gone, I was still going actually, to college, the University of Akron in Ohio. And then later I heard, I was at whatever was the headquarters of the Rainbow Coalition in Chicago, and I was there for a speech that was unrelated to his campaign. And I did not realize Fred Hampton was the source of the term Rainbow Coalition, or at least the concept. I didn't know that till this article. And because when he's describing it, it's exactly what the movie Judas and the Black Messiah shows Fred Hampton doing in Chicago, getting poor whites and Latinos and Black people all together. And I think you'll see anytime a revolutionary or radical in this country starts to create a coalition of poor working people, they get taken out. And the same is true for MLK. That is part of the reason that he was assassinated, I believe, is because he was becoming more open about his belief in socialistic government economics. So I read, when Nancy asked me to clarify, I read some of what I was going to say at the end here. So let me just see what I left out. I mentioned about the indentured versus the enslaved. I would say now when the media refers to the working class, and you see this during when the presidential campaign was last happening, they would go talk to like specifically working class people in Youngstown, Ohio, and they're in a bar and it's all white men. And the media never presents the working class as being more than just poor white people who are disenfranchised. Like they to really push them on that, I think. And I think that this is a quote from the blog that we use for our book group. Racism is a tangible reality that benefits white workers just enough for them to accept it. And that white workers have a lot more in common with Black workers than they do with billionaires. And that's another problem I think that our country has, is that white working people have been led to believe that they can become Bill Gates, that they can become Jeff Bezos. And it is never going to happen. It is never going to happen. I heard Chris Rock once say that if Bill Gates had Oprah's money, he'd kill himself because he would consider himself poor. And then just a statement or a term that was used in the blog that we used was calling it that we need a collective care model. And I just thought that was a beautiful way to think about how we could have a better nation and be more unified, is if we all just tried to collectively care for one another and resist all of the ways that they are trying to divide us. So I really appreciate everybody's participation and the information and the wisdom that you all brought. And I'm going to stop the recording and then we will do the announcements.